What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday and welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we're going to be working through the 2023 rookie wide receiver class, and I've got a couple of great guests. No Jerry this week. Jerry is still on the MIA list. Actually, I say that jokingly. I miss Jerry, and he's a busy guy, but I got a couple of guys filling in with me this week to talk about these rookie wide receivers. The first guy is Dr. Frankenstank. He is the CEO over at Toilets to Titles, and he was one of the original co-hosts of this very podcast. He is a longtime friend of the show, Mr. John Schepps. Schepps, welcome back, buddy.
Man, it is good to be here. Yeah, one of the original. I remember when Mike Goins asked me to lead this thing off, and he gave me LJ and MJ, and then LJ split off, and MJ stuck around, and then you were listening to the show. We brought you on, man. Those were good times, man. So it is definitely great to be back where it all started for me, and to bring on my buddy here. So one of my buddies, my old buddy Nino. I'm sorry, my old buddy Memphis, and now my buddy that I've been rocking with Nino over at Toilets to Title. So it's good to be speaking with both you guys this evening.
Yeah, and the Nino that he's speaking of is Mr. Nino Brown. Now, Nino is the content manager for the Toilets to Titles team. He does a lot of Devi, he does a lot of Dynasty, he does head-to-head leagues, IDP. He also does the good work over at the CFB Nation. That's CFB, CFB probably standing for college football. We'll talk about that in a second. And one thing I love about both these guys is in John's bio, he was reminding us that he's Emmett and Dylan's daddy. And in Nino's bio, he is dad to twin boys plus one. But Nino, welcome you to the show as well, my friend.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on. John asked me to come on, and I was all for it. Anytime I can talk sports, whether it be NFL, college football, I'm all about it.
Well, I'm all about you guys getting here. We're going to hear about your guys' exploits down in Mobile, Alabama. That's why you're here. You guys are going to talk not only Senior Bowl, but Senior Bowl wide receivers. I'll keep the intro short. I've already been talking to Nino and John for well over 30 minutes, and that's exclusive behind the before I hit the record button coverage over on our patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. Check that out. I can answer any questions about that. And then be sure to hit us up on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, John, you guys are closing in on a milestone over there at Toilets to Titles. You guys are about what a buck 20-ish away from 1,000. Pretty
90.
monumental.
90, man.
90.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, we went down to the Senior Bowl and the coverage. So over the last month or so, we've been working hand in hand with the fellas, KT and Moon, and Mike over there at CFB Nation, Real Ones Productions, working hand in hand. We met them down there and we linked up. So we actually linked up now. We have our college football content is exclusively on the CFB Nation, and that's with Nino, KT mostly over there. So you can find their shows, and P2P now moved over there. That was a college show on the Titles Network. So we put all of our college content. It's over at the CFB Nation. Everything from college level up, like the NFL draft up, is over on the Toilets to Titles YouTube channel. The production value for both networks has been through the roof after merging. So it's been like a 3-year process of growing, trying to refine the process, trying to develop what it is that we want to be about, because there's so many different things you could talk about. Like, man, I love the NFL in general. I love Dynasty. I love redraft. And obviously you mentioned I'm Frankenstein. Like, I love absolutely ridiculous fantasy football nonsense. I love the NFL draft. Like, the NFL season takes a toll on me specifically. I'm a very emotional person. Both of you may know that. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. And, I'm a huge Cowboys fan. So the season is grueling. But then the postseason, the draft content, that's, I always say it, the season of optimism and the season of hope. So this is the time where we shine. So we've refined the process, man. We're about 90 subscribers from hitting 1,000. Again, Nino Brown, he's also the COO of Toilets to Title. So he's also the content manager, COO, and bringing him on, like, having somebody who matches my vision and, his work ethic is through the roof, has been a huge proponent to just kind of catapulting us towards that milestone.
Well, I'll make sure to share their link to their YouTube channel and some tweets. And if for some reason you are following us and not following them on YouTube, you never know. It could be a race. You could be the 1,000th subscriber. Don't be afraid to be like 997 or 1,004.
Yeah.
We're just trying to help get our brothers there. So we used to do a little segment here called "Good People, Bad Tweets." We've been holding off on that during the rookie season. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you guys a Lance Zierlein write-up of a former prospect. This one's from the 2019 class.
Okay.
And you're going to tell me who he's talking about, okay?
Yeah.
In this case, the position is quarterback. So here we go. Zierlein says, big and talented with an explosive arm, but limited mobility. He is a chance taker with the arm strength to get away with some tight window throws, but most in this class can't make. Haskins is shit.
Oh, ruined it.
This is the first time I've blown it. He is still very early in his journey. It is prone to misreading coverages. So we're live on the. So yeah, I blew it, but
that was funny though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was just sitting there reading. I was like, I got the first one, but the larger point is that you got to watch these write-ups, right? I take all of these things with a grain of salt. First time I've botched the good people, bad tweets.
That was priceless. I think that should be a drop. Oh, shit.
Maybe it will be. We'll just leave that in. It's free. It's what happens when you subscribe. You get the unfiltered, unedited version. But
that's it.
We'll just jump right into the body of the show. So. Like I said, beginning of the show, you guys just got back from Mobile. Nino, tell us about your experience and your week in Mobile. What'd you learn? What'd you see? What are you excited about? Who are you excited about? Just give us your Senior Bowl recap.
Oh man, Mobile was great. Just meeting everybody, like actually meeting them, like meeting John and T2T family and KT and the CFB Nation and Moon, and then also Brian Bosage from the Draft Countdown, who's been, a good friend of mine through this whole process of, becoming a content creator, just meeting everybody, and then getting on the field. I was on the field. I could see the sweat coming off these gentlemen that were playing, getting angles and seeing the game with a totally different perspective. You sit in the sand, you see the game, but when you're on the field, it's a whole different world. Interviewing over 40 players. It was a surreal aspect of the whole thing, was interviewing everybody, but it was like second nature to us after the first one. We knocked down, like I said, about 35, 40 of them. Met a bunch of people, had a good time. Talked to Jim Nagy, the Crane Company brothers, Jake Crane. I can't complain. I had a blast. John, what about you, buddy?
Man, Memphis, have you heard the Jalen Tolbert story?
Oh,
I have not. So please.
So, well, everything Nino said, completely, I agree with. I got there a day later than they all got there. So they were kind of in the groove. I had connecting flight. I can't really talk because Nino drove like 30 hours with 3 children and his wife. So, I mean, his commute wasn't very easily. But I got down there, I got to the field a half hour before the second practice of the first day ended. And everybody, from the team, we're a pretty big team, and there were about 8 of us there, and everybody had their roles. We were prepping for this for a while. And it was overwhelming at first. I'm like, man, where do I fit in? What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And then getting down in the field, setting up the production equipment. The first day was a whirlwind. But like you said, the next day we had the breakfast and the interviews were great. But anyway, I'll give you the quick version of the Jalen Tolbert story. So we park behind the stadium. And behind the stadium, there's a lower entrance to the field. And that's where you would line up to walk out on the field after the practices ended. You line up 15 minutes before the practices ended so you could walk out on the field. But then you'd have to walk out. There's a security guy in front of the parking lot. You'd pass him a few times a day, and then you'd walk up to the stadium and then go into the stands to watch the practices. And that's where we would split up, and I'd watch receivers and defensive backs. Somebody watched quarterbacks, running backs, whatever. We'd split up. And we walked back and forth through this security entrance with one security guard, nice fella, sitting in a chair. And we would just, how I am. I'll talk to anybody. And I was talking to this guy in passing a few times. And then we're on our way down towards the field, and we had some T-shirts made up. some orange Toots Titles t-shirts. We were giving them to all the players, and this dude was real cool, so I gave him a t-shirt, the security guard, just because he didn't give us a hard time, and he's just a nice fella. So like 2 minutes after I give him a t-shirt, a car pulls in, like a white Hyundai, and I look in the car. And immediately I know it's Jalen Tolbert. Like, that's Jalen Tolbert. This is South Alabama. I didn't even, like, it was immediate. Like, that's Jalen Tolbert in the car. And that's where he went to college. Security guard's like, where's your credentials? And Jalen, I can see it in his face. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Jalen Tolbert's thinking, like, I don't have credentials. What are you talking about? What do you want from me? And I look at the security guard and I go, you got to let that guy in. And it's just me, the security guard, and Jalen Tolbert at this point. You know, no one else is around. And he's like, what do you mean? Is he a player? And I'm like, yes, he played here and he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. And the security guard's like, oh, I'm a Cowboys fan. You know, I'll let him in. So he let Jalen Tolbert, like, you know, you ever seen Night at the Roxbury? I feel like this is the Richard Grieco story. He turns and he tips his cap like this. No, but he didn't have a cap, but he acknowledged me, you know, and then he drives through. And then I see Nino. And I'm like, Nino, like, Jalen Tolbert is parked right there. I just got him into the parking lot, and Nino's like, oh, go say what's up to him. And I was like, oh, man, like, I was a little gun shy. So Nino walks up to him. We go say hi. We go up. I shake his hand. And essentially, I got Jalen Tolbert into the Senior Bowl. So no big deal.
You know, I love that story, but the movie reference that would have been perfect there is you should have looked over at Jalen Tolbert from Step Brothers and went, did we just become best friends?
Yeah. I'm hoping, like, I DM'd him on Instagram. I was like, hey, I was that guy who got you in. You know, you want to come on the show? And no response yet, but maybe he'll remember, and we'll get him.
Man, maybe he'll remember how much I love that man going into rookie drafts last year. I drafted him in the Toilets to Titles Frankenstein League. Did not do me any favors in that format, but you know, there's always year two. There's always year two. Well, before we start jumping into these rookie questions for you, gents, do you have anything you want to promote? Obviously, I'm sure all of your Toilets to Titles Senior Bowl coverage is dropping over on the YouTube channel. What else would you want the listeners of the Dynasty WarZone to know before we jump into some questions?
I would say we just started a Gilded chat. So we had, like, you know, the Frankenstein chat was on GroupMe, and there's like over 60 people in there. And then we had like a Patreon chat on Discord. We just combined everything, got rid of both servers, and threw it all on Gilded. So now in Gilded, we have the multiple channels. It's just easier to navigate. So if you want to interact with us, interact with anybody from the team, get in Gilded. Frankenstein is our listener league. It's 60 teams. It was 5 divisions. We're going up to 96 teams, I believe. We're adding 3 divisions. It's if you want like an insight, if you're somebody who likes a challenge and likes something different, go to our YouTube, Toilets to Titles, and look up Frankenstein in our channel, and you'll find a show discussing it, one of our shows. And if you get in the Gilded chat and you say, hey, Coach Schepps, I'm coming from the Dynasty WarZone, and if you say that, you're guaranteed. I'll give you a guaranteed entry, because usually we do giveaways and all sorts of stuff. But I'm telling you right now, come from Dynasty WarZone, come into our Gilded. So reach out to me or Nino on the Twitter at Coach Schepps, at Titles, at Nino Brown _T2T, and let us know. We'll send you the link. And if you come in there and you say in the chat, coming from DWZ, I want to be in Frankenstein, I'm guaranteeing you a spot. So that's really the plugs. Nino, you got any plugs, man?
You hit it up. I was going to say, get Gilded. Gilded is the new wave. Hop on the Gilded. You want to interact with us? There's all kinds of channels there. It's the way to go. CFB Nation will have a channel on there as well. So there'll be a college input. Any questions you want to ask us on the fly, we'll be there. So get Gilded.
And I just downloaded the Gilded app. John sent me the link the other day because I am in the Frankenstein League. I have the dubious distinction, I won't give too much away, of having a player stolen. What does that mean? Well, head over to Gilded, get signed up, and get into a Frankenstein League with me, with John, and Gino. So let's get into some of these rookies, guys. I'll start with you, Nino. Maybe it's a Senior Bowl guy. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a junior. Who's your favorite wide receiver in this class?
Well, I got to say something real quick before we get into this. When I do docs with Coach, if I'm not in the doc first, I gotta prepare myself, because my guys will get swiped. But we both like the same guy. But I got another guy like Natrashe Rice. Okay, he was at the Senior Bowl. He may have not balled out at the Senior Bowl, but I believe it's because he knew where he stood already. And he might have scared a little people because the measurables at the Senior Bowl might have changed from what SMU has on the stat sheet. I know SMU, he was 6'2", 6'3". He came in at 6 foot flat, 200 pounds. But he plays bigger than 6 feet, okay? He has speed, both inline and the speed to cause separation. And once he catches the ball, man, watch out. Open field, Rashee Rice can beat any DB one-on-one. He is a zone coverage maniac. He'll eat you a pop, okay? He has a huge catch radius, and he has excellent hands. None to mention, you put in the dog mentality. Trying to tackle this man one-on-one, good luck. But not only is he great after the catch, he gave Tanner Mordecai had a QBR rating of 99.9 when he targeted Rice. And Rice ended last year with 96 catches for 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 14 yards per catch. For me, Rashee Rice is that guy that everybody is thinking Quentin Johnson is going to be. Rashee Rice is that dude.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He broke all of Cortland Sutton's records at SMU, correct? No, I'm sorry.
Correct.
It wasn't Cortland Sutton's records. They were Emmanuel Sanders' records. Because he didn't even know it.
He owns all the wide receiver records.
He owns all the records, but it was Sanders' records who he broke. What I like about him, I'm looking at his profile right now, ascending every year. 25 catches, 48 catches, 64 catches, 96 catches. He ran out of college production, or next year he would have been due for like 128. So he just a great ascending, and then the touchdowns went up too. John, what are your thoughts on Rice? And then who is your favorite? Again, doesn't have to be the best, but who's your favorite guy of this class?
Man, so I agree with Rashee Rice. I think he's a stud. We got to interview him at the Senior Bowl. It was very nice meeting him. He's a big dude. He's physical. One of my favorite traits about Rashee Rice isn't just his ability to get open. I love how he comes back to the football aggressively to secure the catch and make sure the defender doesn't get in between him and the football and get it. Like he doesn't wait. He doesn't sit. And I think that's a trait that sometimes is overlooked. You know, he's competitive for the football. He's not just competitive to get open, and you got to give him that. So my guy, which Nino alluded to, that I guess he wanted to, so I wanted to surprise you with who is your favorite wide receiver in this class. And in years past, I might have been able to, because I feel like this year there's a lot of guys. Like you ever go to like your grandmother's house, right? And you go to your grandmother's house and she's got those tin of sugar cookies. And each different type of sugar cookie, there's like they're all in a bundle. Like there's the one that looks like pretzels, and they're bundled in like a little cellophane thing. And there's a bunch of receivers this year bundled together, in my opinion. There's, you got Quentin Johnson, who's like the unicorn because of his size, at the top. But then there's a lot of other guys who kind of, in one way or another, fit the same mold. So I wasn't really able to go too far outside of the box. And I'm going to go with the guy that I really enjoy. And I want him for the Cowboys. And that's Jackson Smith-Njigba, coming out of Ohio State. Was only able to play in 3 games this past year due to hamstring injuries, which is 100% concerning. But Ohio State, and Nino's talking about Rashee Rice. SMU, not for nothing, they've put out some solid wide receiver talent. Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Cortland Sutton. So there's guys coming out of SMU. Danny Gray, who I had a thing for last season. But this year, Ohio State, man, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, then they got Marvin Harrison Jr., and Brian Hartline's the wide receiver coach out there, and he's doing he's incredible. I think he's just very good at his job, because what makes me think he's very good at his job? These guys are coming in at an early age and they're producing. Jackson Smith-Njigba comes into an offense at Ohio State, and he's playing with guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And remember, Chris Olave could have left the year prior. He came back. So everybody knew who the dudes were there. And he didn't tuck his tail between his legs and shy away from it. He came out, man. And don't get me wrong, we were talking prior to this, like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, phenomenal. Like they stood out, but so did Jackson Smith-Njigba. He doesn't have that elite breakaway speed. I think I was watching the game against Penn State. He's going across the middle, nothing but green grass. He gets about 40 yards, get caught by 3 guys. 3 guys catch him. But what he does have elite traits in is when he is within arm's distance of a defender, he has elite quickness. He is so good at avoiding contact when he doesn't get rerouted. You never see a defensive back get his hands on him and throw off the timing between him and the quarterback. And he's also very good at getting open right when the quarterback's under duress, which you include that quickness, you include the ability to get open like at the perfect timing. He's going to be a quarterback safety blanket immediately. I think he's going to be pigeonholed to be a slot receiver, but that's okay. And right now in today's NFL, those are the guys who are getting a lot of targets. And I think everything about him screams safe. He is safe. He is talented. And he's also willing to do the dirty work. He's going to block for you. If you're asking him to block for you, he's going to go across the middle and take contact. If you're asking him to go across the middle and take contact, he was like doing the dirty work when Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were on the outsides, taking the top off the defense, going vertical routes, going deep comebacks. So he was doing the blocking on the bubble screens for those guys. And I just, everything about him, I really enjoy.
Let me ask you a question before we pivot to my next question is, why do you think he's starting to maybe, I don't want to say fall down draft boards, but you're starting to hear more and more, like when the mock draft process started back in, hell, I started seeing him in late December, early January. Why does it feel like he's falling almost out of the first round right now?
He's old news. People are bored.
Yeah, what have you done for me lately? That's how it is in college football.
People are bored, man, and people get cute. And sometimes, it is good to question your process, and it is good to keep watching film, but like, don't change your rankings just for the sake of changing your rankings. Like, there's got to be a reason you put somebody ahead of him, and it shouldn't be just because he didn't play much this year. If you are concerned about the injury, I think he might fall into the 20s in the draft because crazier things have happened. Justin Jefferson did, CeeDee Lamb did, but also this wide receiver class, like I said, they're all coming from the same cookie tray. So like if coaches or GMs know they have to take a slot receiver because that's really all that's available, I think they're going to look at his production and think, I think this is the guy who kind of does a little bit of everything. And so yeah, it's just like Nino said, what have you done for me lately?
All right, John, while I got you on the mic, who is going to be the value of this wide receiver group? Who are we going to look back in, maybe 2 seasons and say, I cannot believe I got, like Terry McLaurin a few years ago, Cooper Kupp, one of my favorite initial guys ever.
Both Senior Bowl guys.
And your guy doesn't have to be a senior guy, but who's going to be the value when we look back 2 years from now?
So I got 2 guys, and one of them is a Senior Bowl guy, and that's Michael Wilson from Stanford. I think he's a mid-round guy. I think he's got a great frame. He's an outside wide receiver. We talked about him on the show before. He's very smooth. He's a very good route runner. He's very abrupt, got good hands. He runs, a very good passing tree. He runs all the routes. He's a former captain at Stanford, academic all honor. So everything about him, as far as value goes, now this isn't dynasty related because I can't tell you he's going to come in and catch 8 and I know this is Dynasty WarZone. I can't tell you he's going to come in and catch 8 balls a game, but I think he's going to come into the NFL. He reminds me, I think he could be what Michael Gallup gives you in Dallas. I could see Michael Wilson giving you somewhere else. I think he could be a quarterback's third option, safe, good hands. He's going to be open. And I see a lot of that smoothness that I see from Gallup and the good hands, the good ball tracking. I see that from Michael Wilson. But now as far as dynasty goes, who's the value wide receiver? And that's another wide receiver who's fell a lot and because of a lot of issues. And that's Kayshon Boutte out of LSU, or Booty, however you want to pronounce it. I like Boutte.
It's the best name in the draft. I think Boutte is my favorite as well.
I think it just sounds like, like it just sounds like somebody coming out of New Orleans. Boutte. So this guy, he's another guy. He's very well put together. He's estimated to come in at 6'190", but his frame, his lower body, his upper body just looks strong and sturdy. Like you see some guys come in top heavy, some guys come in bottom heavy. He's very well put together. He's got very good speed. His hands, at times, it almost looks, so the reason I think it's value is because I think you're going to be able to get him. You might be able to get him in the 3rd in Dynasty, which that's just high risk, low reward. he had some, I guess, some strange, bizarre things that happened at LSU. So who knows what NFL GMs are going to be thinking of him, but somebody's going to take him. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere between, I think in the fourth, when the compensatory picks start coming in and people got extra picks, they're going to take him. He's fast. He wore this number 7 at LSU, and that also means something. Jamar Chase wore number 7. Tyrann Mathieu wore number 7. Leonard Fournette wore number 7. Like, they don't just give that to anybody. And if you look at his freshman film, when LSU won the national championship, he looked like that dude. Like, he looked like Jackson Smith-Njigba looked last year. That's how Boutte looked. And Boutte's doing that from the outside. And he's not like a physical run after the catch guy, but similar to like what I said about Jackson Smith-Njigba, how he kind of manipulates his body and he's quick and short distances. Boutte is like that as well. I mean, he's faster though. Boutte, I think, has the higher end speed. I just think, give me an outside receiver, a guy who can get a lot of targets, low cost, high upside. I think it's Boutte.
I'm a big Boutte guy as well. I'm getting George Pickens vibes.
Oh, I love George Pickens. I love George Pickens.
A guy that could have went higher in the NFL draft that feels like he's fallen for the wrong reasons. All right,
George Pickens will fight you for the football, though. I don't know if
Boutte's not fighting nobody.
Yeah.
Well, Nino, what are your thoughts on Boutte, and then who's your biggest value wide receiver in this class?
I always back my guy John. My only question with Boutte is Malik Neighbors, who was a no one coming into last season, outperformed Boutte. And Boutte looked like there was a couple of games, especially that first game against Florida State, where he just quit on his team. That pass in the end zone, if he would have put a little effort and reach, they probably could have won that game.
He ran into a dude on a jet sweep, right? He ran into the last lineman. I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, he
was
very
bizarre.
checked out. He was checked out early. But I was hard on him all year, and I'll admit it, but I took into consideration he had a child mid-season. He's a kid himself, still having a kid, still going to school while trying to under a new scheme, new head coach. So it is what it is. He needs to clean up his head a little bit, put his head on a straight and narrow. The talent's there. I believe Coach said you could probably get him in third. For me, I alluded to a little bit in the green screen for the Patreons, and that's going to be Nathaniel Tank Dell out of Houston. A lot of GMs, right? Now, lately it's been these small wide receivers, that can work well in space. But a lot of GMs and coaches will see 5'8", 165, and they'll shy away quick. Give me 5 minutes of you actually watching film and not highlights, and you'll be blown away. 109 receptions, 1,400 yards, led the nation the last 2 seasons combined with 27 yards receiving, 17 touchdowns this year, 12 yards per catch. Dell continues to destroy secondaries. Man coverage, zone coverage, it does not matter. You want to put the high safety on him, he will find a way. His speed is elite, okay? And I'm not talking just straight inline speed. I'm not talking about separation. The comeback speed, whether it be on an out route, whether it be on a comeback, whether it be on a flag, my man puts his foot in the ground and moves, and there's instant separation. Dell oozes playmaking swag. Like I call him, and I get this vibe really strong from him. I hope he stays more healthier than him, but he has Kadarius Toney vibes through the roof, right? Angry guy at the wide receiver position, plays angry, plays aggressive, has speed, can cut on the dime. The swag from both of them gentlemen as a playmaker is through the roof. His separation at the line, man, if you're a physical DB, you better not miss. Because if you go to bump him and you miss, it's night time. Okay? He's going to the crib, or he's going to go for at least 15 to 20 yards. He can win on the outside, but my concern is he's small at 5'8". Can he win consistently on the outside? Is it going to be a scheme thing for Dell? I think in a wide open offensive format, he could blow doors off in the first year. So we'll see where he goes. I'm not saying that he can dominate one-on-one against a Jalen Ramsey on the outside every single play, but the speed is definitely a factor, and he is elite in the open field, an absolute natural playmaker. He has laser beams for the hole to go to make a man miss.
All right, John, tell us your thoughts on Nathaniel Tank Dell And then tell us who's going to be the most overdrafted wide receiver in this class. Maybe it's based on reputation, maybe it's their resume. But tell us what you think about Mr. Dell, and then your overdraftee.
Man, I'm a believer. I didn't watch much of Dell prior to the Senior Bowl, and Wilson was there, who I said is going to be value. Rashee Rice, who was Nino's favorite wide receiver, earlier in the show, was there. And Dell was just on a completely different level than everybody there, those guys included. The DBs just couldn't stay with him. And it was just start to finish. Every route he ran, he was just blowing guys away. Quarterbacks were missing him because quarterbacks couldn't catch up to his speed. They couldn't even get comfortable with throwing him the football because his speed was so different than the other wide receivers they were throwing to every other rep. So you could see that right away. And I also think it's no coincidence that Nino was talking about Stephon Diggs earlier as a buy. You see a little bit of Kadarius Toney. I remember Stephon Diggs when he was at Maryland. Like he was, little guy, explosive, playing at a small, Maryland's not a small school, but when we talk about football, it's a small school. It's probably similar to Houston, right?
Yeah.
I think we would probably put them in the same class. And he was just blowing everybody away. And he was kind of a late riser in the process. Like he was really projected, I want to say, like the third or fourth round. So
early third.
I think it's similar. I think I see a lot of that in Tank Dell. I think if somebody, is trying to emulate what Josh Allen has with Stephon Diggs out there in Buffalo, like a la LA Chargers, it would be very smart, to put him next to Mike Williams, especially with Keenan Allen on his way out, and let him just rip the top off defenses and let Justin Herbert absolutely just let it fly. I think that would be excellent. And then my guy for who I think is going to be overdrafted based upon their resume is a guy that I talked about the other day on the show. I compared him. We had Trevor Sikkema on, and we were talking wide receivers, and I compared this guy to Will Fuller. And that's Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. His resume, he had 67 receptions in 2022, 1,200 yards, so 1,267, 15 touchdowns, 18.9 yards per receptions. He was a consensus All-American and a Biletnikoff winner. So everybody is going to see that and not watch the film, and they're going to think this guy is an alpha. He is a wide receiver one. He is not. He is a guy who you need to put him in an offense with alphas. If you put him in an offense with alphas, and if you have a coach like Andy Reid who's capable of scheming anybody open, and he's going to find this guy buckets of space, he can get it done in space, a la Will Fuller, where we saw him do it in the NFL. He is a burner. He is an absolute burner. And if you got a quarterback who can throw it, over them their mountains, this is the wide receiver you want for him. But he's not a guy that I'm going to count on. If I'm drafting a guy as high as Jalen Hyatt is probably going to go in dynasty drafts, I would say anywhere between 7 and 10. I think that's going to be his ADP, and I think that's too high, especially in Superflex. I'll take AR before I'll take Anthony Richardson before I take Jalen Hyatt, and that's risk versus reward. I think the reward with getting, and this could be a whole nother show debating philosophy, but I think if it's super flex, the cost of hitting a quarterback is so much higher than the cost of hitting on a guy like this, who you don't know week in and week out if he's going to get that chunk play where he's going to take the top off the defense. He's not going to get targeted 8 times a game. I'm sorry. He's not. He's going to get targeted 3 to 5. And probably most weeks it's going to be 3. And if what, say one of them's an incompletion, 2 of them are catches, he's 2 for 50, no touchdowns. That's not value. He's not going to do what he did at Tennessee. I think if I'm a GM, I think if I'm in the NFL and Jalen Hyatt falls between, let's say, the 16th pick of the second round and the 16th pick of the third round, if I'm in that range, right? And I already have a great tight end, a very good wide receiver one, put him in the offense, help out my quarterback, make defenses respect the deep ball. but I'm not bringing him in and expecting to build an offense around him. That's just not happening. So that's the guy that I think is going to be overdrafted.
And what about you, Nino? Who's going to be overdrafted?
Well, I'm Coach already knows I'm right with him with Hyatt. Josh Heupel was in his bag all year. He schemed him wide open many a times. But I'm gonna go, and I'm probably gonna upset a lot of people here because he's probably that consensus top 3. And I'm gonna go with Quentin Johnson out of TCU as my guy that I think is gonna get overdrafted. I know he's the unicorn, 6'3", he's the big body guy. 60 receptions he had this year for 1,069 yards, 6 touchdowns. You're the dude, right? You're supposed to be the unicorn wide receiver, that big body guy. You had 6 touchdowns. You had 9 games under 80 yards. You had 6 under 50. That's just this year alone. Last year, and I was riding a absolutely balling out Max Duggan, right? Last year you had 33, 634. Again, 6 TDs. He is a big wide receiver, but sometimes he plays like he's an oak tree, and he's so straight up, too upright for me, that DBs, bigger DBs and safeties, manhandle him. Like, I worry at his frame in the NFL, a bigger safety is going to light this dude up. I've watched it in college. He's hit him a few times to let the drop balls, let him kind of like getting gimpy on full extension on the catches. And his route tree is very, very small. It's about that big. He runs like 3 routes. That's about it. And his separation is not on an elite level. I'm not saying he's not a top wide receiver, but they're going to just see the unicorn factor. They're going to put him in his top 3. And I don't know if he's going to perform at that top 3 level right off the rip.
Let me ask you one more quick question, and I'll hit you with the next question. Maybe it'll lead you right back to the same guy. Does it feel like he's getting – does it feel like he plays the game the way the game is played in 2023? Because when I see Quentin Johnson, when I think of the way the game's played now, I see Justin Jefferson. I see Cooper Kupp. I see Stephon Diggs. I see Garrett Wilson. I see Chris Olave. I see those guys. I don't see the Quentin Johnson body type and route scheme. And I don't think he's as good as a DK Metcalf. It just kind of feels like he's a man without a scheme, and that he's going to be a really boom bust wide receiver 2-3 at the dynasty level. Am I crazy for saying that?
I agree with that statement 100%. The thing I kept trying to enunciate was the 6 touchdowns. You're supposed to be the unicorn big body wide receiver, and you can't find the red zone. Who does that remind you of? I hate to say it because he was a dog. Julio Jones. Big body guy, couldn't find the end zone, whether that was Atlanta or Matt Ryan's fault. Now, Julio was a stud, right? But he couldn't score. He had one season where he had a lot of touchdowns. Other than that, very, very little touchdowns. I worry about Quentin Johnson because he doesn't have much given to him in the wide receiver. Like, the route tree is small, right? He's kind of like a twig out there as a big guy. He's not as physical as you would want at the size he is. It worries me a lot. There are a lot of physical DBs out there. And if he's not a target in the red zone, what does he bring into the table?
All right, John. Maybe it's Quentin Johnston. Maybe it's someone else. Who's the bust of this class? Who's just not going to pan out at the pro level?
I've never heard a wide receiver compared to an oak tree before. So that was a first for me, and that was my favorite part of that segment.
I think he meant upright. I was thinking stiff. Like this
yeah,
stiff
I think he meant both.
Tree.
I think he meant both.
Yeah,
could be both. Yeah,
and I think the way he managed to tie that together, I think was absolutely phenomenal. But it's a thin oak tree because his route tree is very thin. He reminds me of Kevin White out of West Virginia.
Yeah,
who came into the NFL, injuries, but just bust. And I'm nervous. My guy is Quentin Johnson as well. And it was tough to predict who is the most likely to bust because I don't think there is a top 10 wide receiver in this class. I don't. I don't think any of these wide receivers are worthy of being picked. I wouldn't even say top 12. Mm-hmm. None of these are franchise wide receivers. There's a few guys like Josh Downs, Zay Flowers, and then, like I mentioned, Jackson Smith and Najigba, a lot of these guys are going to come in and they're going to help out offenses day one, but none of these guys are you're going to build an offense around. And I think a lot of people are going to think Quentin Johnson is that because, like Nino said, his size, he's the unicorn. For a big guy, he had a 34% contested catch rate in 2022. So Memphis, you're talking about him kind of being that old school guy without a role. Well, even in the role that a big physical receiver is supposed to be in, he wasn't even successful in it. He wasn't climbing the ladder, boxing guys out and coming down with all those contested catches. He wasn't, decently below 50%. Like Nino mentioned, he played in 13 games this year. 6 of those he was held under 50 yards. And one of them being the biggest game he played in, the national championship, he had 1 reception for 3 yards in the national championship. I don't think Max Duggan is very good. I don't. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. I don't think, maybe 7th round pick, 6th round pick, undrafted free agent. So some of that has to do with Max Duggan playing against the Georgia Bulldogs and that defense. That defense is phenomenal. But if you're a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL draft, especially given CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, these guys all went 18 to 24. If you want to be somebody picked in the top 15, you better be creating separation. And even when you're not even when you're not open, you're open. That's what I need from somebody, and that's not Quentin Johnson. So I think people in dynasty leagues, I think people are going to get excited. He'll probably run fast. He's big. He's probably going to go somewhere between 4 and 7. And you can't miss between 4 and 7, especially if you're picking at 4 and you didn't trade for that spot. You're likely not a very good team and you need help. And he's not somebody who's going to be more than he'd probably be, a low end wide receiver 2 at times. And maybe I'm wrong, but this is, you said most likely. I'm not guaranteeing it, but that's most likely.
Well, what I'm hearing is I like small wide receivers that play big. Yes. I don't like big wide receivers that play small, and I heard you guys both kind of say that. Nino, my man, who's busting? Who's your projected bust of this group?
So it's this coach's guy. I thought he was going to come with them, and he didn't. Everybody's, we talk about what have you done for me lately. Everybody's looking for that cheap small school wide receiver they can get and just be that Christian Watson guy, right? And for me this year, he had all the hype going at the Senior Bowl, and I think he fell flat in his face. That's Andre. Coach, what's his last name?
I think it's Yosivas or Yosivas.
Yosivas. I think it's Yosivas. But from Princeton, he just didn't wow me at all.
His hair wowed you, though.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, he gave me the Fabio look, but that was about it. The speed is there, but it's just in line. Run him straight, he's fast as hell. But there's no separation with the speed. Once he starts to cut and make footwork in a route, the speed slows down. His footwork is average, but not elite. At 6'3", 200 pounds, you would think he'd be able to bang with these guys. He lacks body control. When he goes up to high point the ball and in traffic, he's just kind of all over the place. I heard a lot of hype about, his one-on-ones. Yeah, he's on a one-on-one. He's scary. But any physical DB that throws any kind of chink in his armor, he's falling off course. And the speed won't be able to outperform the other weaknesses, I think, in his game. So for me, I think AI is going to be the guy that's going to bust.
All right. Well, there's a new name. So one thing I've been asking everybody whenever they're helping us with a position group is what are some of the premier or best landing spots? John, Cowboys notwithstanding, I do think Dallas is a good spot. But what's a good landing spot, and do you have a guy you'd like to see in that spot?
I can't mention the Cowboys?
You sure can, John. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Because I am.
You, our own Kyle of the Fantasy Football Smackdown, our doctor of physical therapy, Dr. Kyle. You guys are all my favorite Cowboys fans. So, what's a premier spot and maybe a quick name of a guy you'd like to see land there?
So I think the Cowboys are a premier spot. Jalen Tolbert, we drafted him in the 3rd round. He barely saw the field. He didn't even make the active roster. I think maybe 2 or 3 times this season he did. So there's still an opportunity to, but the Cowboys, James Washington was hurt. Michael Gallup was hurt. They gave him every opportunity through training camp to get there. I think they want him to be successful, but I don't know if he can be. That being said, we needed to. Gallup is no more than a 3. He's a guy who's capable of the big play. He's capable of converting on long 3rd downs. He's a good red zone target. But we need a guy like Amari Cooper or a guy like Cole Beasley, somebody in the slot. Because CD, we can bump him outside. CD's shown he can play in the slot, but I think ultimately let's bump CD out wide. There's a bunch of slot receivers. Ideally, give me Jackson Smith-Njigba. I don't think he's going to be there. Who I like if Njigba's gone, give me Josh Downs. Give me Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers is more explosive and sudden than Josh Downs, but I think Josh Downs is a little more nuanced. And I think Josh Downs fits a little bit more in that role of the Cole Beasley, who's going to be exactly where you want to be. Sometimes, so Zay Flowers is excellent after the catch, very explosive, aggressive, tough, physical. But the one thing that just the difference between him and Downs is I think Downs understands spacing a little more than Zay Flowers does. And that could also be coaching. No offense to those guys up in Boston, Nino. No offense to, I know that's where you roll up in Boston College, but I feel like sometimes Zay Flowers just tries to win with speed and abruptness. And sometimes he gets into somebody else's lane when they're running a route, or he doesn't stop his route in the hole. And that's, I feel like Josh Downs is a little more safe, but a lot of people like Zay Flowers more than they like Josh Downs because I think the ceiling's higher. So regardless, there's a bunch of slot receivers. One of them will fit. Even Jordan Addison, USC. There's guys, all around that I think could fit into this offense. So I think Dallas looking for that slot receiver. This is a draft that has a bunch of them. And then another one is the LA Chargers. Keenan Allen, I think, is ultimately on his way out. He might have played his last snap in LA. Mike Williams can't stay healthy. He can't stay on the field. I like Josh Palmer, but I don't think Josh Palmer is the one there. He's the two. So Mike Williams is the one, but when he's hurt, which he's going to be hurt a lot, I think there's, Justin Herbert needs that guy. I don't know if it's in this class. Honestly, I don't know if that dude is in this class, but maybe you put Rashee Rice over there in LA, a guy who you can target. Rashee Rice, to me, when Zay Jones was coming out of ECU, Eastern Carolina, he caught a lot more balls because they were playing a lot less talented squads. Not that SMU's world beaters, but still, I do think that they're playing in a higher class division. I see a lot of the same characteristics. I think Zay Flowers is, I'm saying I got Zay Jones. Now Rashee Rice. I think he's a guy that in an offense, you can Kellen Moore. I saw him learn to pepper CeeDee Lamb about a third of the way through the season. He figured it out. And I think he knows an offense has to move through a primary target. I think the primary target in LA is on his way out in Keenan Allen. And I think that you could bring in a guy like Rashee Rice, make him the primary target there, and really build an offense between those two guys growing together. So Nino, who are your two, man?
First spot for me is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. And
Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, they won the Super Bowl, but Juju's on a one-year deal, and MVS and McCall Hardman have been nothing but average at best. The only sure thing on that offense is Travis Kelce, and Kadarius Toney's contract is locked up for one more year. A stud wide receiver would help Patty Mahomes construct the dynasty train to keep rolling. Now, I say a stud wide receiver, and I'm not talking about the first round because they're going to be at the end of the first round. But a guy like A.T. Perry or Charlie Sizzle Jones, who can take the top off the ball, or taller wide receivers, extend the field for guys, if they bring Juju back, or Tony if he's fully healthy next year, those are guys I can see Kansas City going after. They are a prime spot for a receiver to land. Another spot, and this is all going to go on however the coin flip lands for Cincinnati Bengals.
Were you poking the Bengals with the coin flip? Is that a coin flip joke?
I just do what I do, Coach.
All right, I like it.
It'll have steep repercussions this year because it's either going to be T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. But if it's T. Higgins, you better bring that $100 million Louis bag because it's going to be pricey. So someone's got to be replaced, but Joey Stogie B needs to get paid. So that's your first priority. Once Joey B gets paid, then the money trickles down to a wide receiver. I could see a guy like Trey Palmer or Marvin Mims being wide receiver 2 to Jamar Chase in Cincinnati and legitimately just eating early and often.
All right, I like to hear the T. Higgins take. I don't know that they'll deal T. Higgins this year. Like I see like an NBA sign and trade where they sign him to a deal, knowing that he'll never get the big money while he's a Bengal. They'll trade him in year 5. NFL contracts, obviously completely different than NBA contracts. The guy that I want to see land somewhere is I want to see Jordan Addison land in New York. Danny Dimes needs that guy. And I like Addison. I see Nino's face. We've not talked a lot about him tonight, but that's a guy that I like in this class. So
who did you like more coming out? Sterling Shepard out of Oklahoma or Jordan Addison? To put you on the spot, sorry.
I like Addison more because he's done it with multiple quarterbacks and multiple offenses. He did it at Pitt with Pickett. He did it in USC with Caleb Williams. So part of it is, yes, the schemed open by Lincoln Riley, but part of it is I think he's a pretty good wide receiver. Don't love his size, but I want to see him get my boy Dimes a little bit of help. So last question, we'll get you guys out of here. Who is the wide receiver equivalent of James Robinson? Now, we don't expect you to hit on an absolute steal, and this guy's going to, be a locked up, wide receiver 1 his rookie year from UDFA or late round draft capital. But give us that name, Nino, that we need to keep our ears on and keep our eyes on the tape of a small school guy.
You wanted small school, so I went digging. I had a list of 35 wide receivers, and I came up with Demario Douglas out of Liberty. He tore up the Shrine Bowl with Zay Flowers this year, 5'8", 175 pounds. He's a possession wide receiver that can make things happen in the open field with ease. He is smooth like peanut butter, all right? Double D is like a young Edward Scissorhands, the way he cuts up and leaves DBs looking like Tyronn Lue with the AI crossover, all right? Stepping over him, he leaves them in their dust. He isn't the best downfield receiver, but he can get downfield in a hurry, and he runs a 4.4 40. This is a guy I'm thinking that could be a little, late 7th round pick, maybe, early 7th, late 6th, where he can perform, maybe not week 1, but week 4, 5, and 6, he'll be stepping up and making plays for his team.
All right, John, give us your small school gym. Maybe you saw him in Mobile, maybe they're someone else, but who's your small school guy?
Man, so we had a wide receiver compared to an oak tree, and now Edward Scissorhands. So, man,
he's weaving a tapestry of words for us to cover ourselves.
Man, so I'm glad he went first because his is actually a deep dive. I'm lazy. I haven't gotten that far yet. So mine isn't really a small school guy, but it's BYU, and it's Puka Nacua. I believe that's how you pronounce it, out of BYU, 6'1", 206. He's kind of like that Deebo Samuel guy this year, where he's not built like Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel probably has like 25 pounds on him. So I don't know if he can necessarily take that type of role in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be taking any carries out of the backfield, but he did at BYU. So teams have seen him do that, but I don't think he'll last if he does. That being said, this is a guy who consistently shows he's a dynamic athlete. And dynamic athletes demand touches. He's quick. He's strong. He's good after the catch. He's the type of guy I think where he's going to go to the NFL. He's going to get drafted. I don't know. I don't think he'll be drafted in the first 3 rounds. But I think where he goes and where you're going to be able to get him in dynasty drafts, he's going to coaches are going to like him because of how dynamic he is. I'm sure he's going to be. He'll probably return punts. He'll probably return kicks. He's a playmaker. Give him the ball every chance you get, and I think that's going to earn him some respect from his coaches. And from that respect, he'll get on the field. And then when he gets on the field, he'll be quarterback friendly. And I think he's, again, with Dynasty, fantasy football, PPR, you're going to tell me this guy's going to demand 4 to 6 touches a game, and a lot of those touches are going to be probably close to the line of scrimmage, and then it's going to be what he does after the catch, and the big play is always a possibility. That to me sounds like a flex play. And give me him as a flex play. I think he's a high ceiling flex play, in my opinion, going forward.
Well, see, these are the names we need to know because we all play in dynasty leagues where you draft into the 5th, some cases 6th round. And you need these names. That's why I've added this question into the questions we ask our guests, because I want our guests when they're not driving, or our listeners, when they're not driving a car, to be able to sit down and take a quick note in their phone and say, well, go ahead, John.
I was just saying, if you play in Frankenstein, I think our first round is rookie only. So you need,
Yeah.
I know our first 2 rounds, I think, are rookie only. And we have playable cards. So you can also draft a playable card. You can only take 1 playable card. Last year we had 12. So Memphis, I don't know if you've heard, but we're in the process of adding like 8 cards. So there's gonna be like 20 cards. So each division is gonna have its own, like some divisions are gonna have these and these. Each division's gonna, it's nonsense. It's crazy. But you need to, if you play in Frankenstein, you need to know who these rookie gems are, because you're gonna want to draft them and keep them in your roster, because when your players get stolen, if you lose early on, you need somebody who might break out and take a roster spot.
Yeah, and I can tell you from firsthand Frankenstein experience that if you like role-playing games, if you like Call of Duty, if you like video games, but you also love fantasy football and Dynasty fantasy football, I'm telling you, the Frankenstein Listener League is for you. But guys, thank you so much for coming on. Nino, again, tell us about the CFB network and everything you've got going on.
Yeah, so it's the CFB Nation on the Twitter and on the YouTube. Monday and Tuesday, it's me and KT. It's the governor and the mayor of college football. We're breaking down anything college football. I know it's the off season, but there's no off season for us. We're diving into everything that's college football issues. We're doing we even talking about just today. We talked about 2024 uncommitted QBs. So there's no topic in college football that me and KT don't touch on. And then again, Fridays will be on the CFB Nation. It's me and Boom. We're doing P2P, parts of the playoffs with Boomer and DDP, and we might have Kedrick Reeskano on this Friday doing his Ole Miss freshman running back. We're going to talk about him, see what he's got going on, and then what his expectations are going into this year. So that's what I got going on.
What do you got going on Thursday nights?
Oh, Thursday nights, that's On the Clock with Coach and KT. It's our draft special. Talk about it, Coach.
Yeah, man. Every Thursday we're talking NFL draft. Now this is on the Titles Network because this is after college football. This is the NFL draft, so they're ours now. Thursday nights. So this week, who's the guest? We're talking mid-round gems. I cannot pronounce
with Oliver.
Yeah. So last week we had Trevor Sikkema, we had John Laubon prior. We were live from Senior Bowl. We got Kyle Bellafiel. You know him, Memphis. We're gonna be talking rookie defensive players coming up. So that's our NFL draft show. So a lot of what we talked about this evening, we talk about on the Title Network on Thursdays. And then, my main show is Tuesday nights, and we're doing a Dynasty rookie mock next Tuesday. So that'll be a lot of fun, 2 rounds. So good stuff.
There you go. So if you're looking for everything rookie related when you're not in the war zone, check out our friends John and Nino and the whole crew. Now, wait, before I get Nino out of here, I'll make sure. So you're the mayor and he's the governor. Like in Kentucky, they have these things like called the colonels. You've probably heard of the Kentucky. Maybe I could be like the colonel of college football. We'll work on getting me an official title over there with you guys soon. But I want to thank you, and I want to thank John for popping by. And I'm going to get these guys out of here because in case you didn't know, Nino's been with me and John's been with me for about an hour and a half. You've gotten about an hour of this on the main feed, but we did a lot of just random nuggets over on the Patreon show before I hit the record button. So go over, sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. We'll get you in the group chat. We might have to figure out one of those gilded chats like these guys, and you get all the
comments
bonus.
Are gilded and try it out.
Try their gilded. Get gilded with John and Nino, and then we'll get our own gilded, and then we'll all gild together.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal.
That is the goal. But the ultimate goal here at the Dynasty Warzone is to make the world a better place for fantasy football. I think we did that tonight. I'll be back. I'm going to try to link up with Jerry. We'll call this the main episode of the week, and we'll try to get Jerry on for a little bonus. He's just been super busy with real world stuff, but he'll be back talking football soon. And thanks for tuning in, and have a great week, guys. Thank you.